permanent 2-wire hot ground fence. Most of these other basins are now fenced this way. Totally a different paradigm from what they had ever done there. And one of the goals of this ranch is to completely eliminate hay feeding, and they're getting very close to it. But if you can take each of your grazing units and get 40% more use out of it, that means you're going to do a lot less harvested feeding and a lot more grazing. This is one of their winter units. 5 sections, so this is 640 acres, 640 acres, 640 acres, 640 in the center there. They've been grazing it as 4 large pastures, decided they wanted to do something else with it, and so we took initially just 1 unit of it, and I'll blow that up, and put it into, again, this is a square mile, 640 acres, so the strips here are each a 1/4 mile wide. Why do we go no further than a 1/4 mile? Because the standard electric fence reel holds a 1/4 mile. And it takes about 20 stepping posts to do that, so it's still something that you can easily manage and do. So they set this system up, and doesn't it look remarkably similar to the little sheep and cattle finishing outfit in Iowa? Except there they had 330-foot wide corridors because we needed to use the electric netting because we were dealing with sheep. Here, exactly the same principle. We've just laid it out in corridors. That's the only water source, so we have a lane to take into water. First year they did that, again, picked up 30 to 35% more graze, more stock days out of this unit than what historically they had gotten, because they're starting to control the grazing. As you might imagine, they've since taken these other units and split them up that way. Also, Chase Hibbard is the owner there. They had a field day up there last year. And here's the comment he made: 3 years of MIG did more for ranch health than 20 years of rest rotation. And that is grazing it in the winter time. I think this is the last one here. We'll get through it and then we'll break for lunch. This is a guy out of Wolf Point, Montana. Blaine Hoverslund used to be a crop farmer. Seeded down 3,000 acres of cropland. He had range, but he had 11,000 acres, and he fenced down into 1-section pastures. Again, this is something Neil can relate to because we're talking in sections and quarters. So he has an 18-paddock system. Put stock water development at the center of each one. Several wells with solar pumps installed. If we had known Marv Jackson and Sundog Solar 5 years ago when we set this system up, we wouldn't have put a pump and panel series at each location. We would have just taken one of their combined mobile units that's got the solar panels, pump, tank, everything. The wells would be there, but you would just have pulled that unit. This installation is about $10,000 here. I think Marvin's. Are you handy, Marvin? I think for their top-end unit to handle this number of cattle would be about $7,500 rather than having a half a dozen. Your big double unit that has the pump, the panels, and everything, where we could water 800 to 1,000 head. What's that total unit cost these days?
For 1,000 stock.
Yeah.
22,000.
22,000. Okay, my mistake. I was thinking of the single unit. 22,000 for that unit, the largest end, but still, if you compare to putting in 6 of these installations that were going in at about $10,000 a piece, that's $60,000. If you can do it with 22,000 and move 1 pump instead of panels location to location, you're way ahead. And again, we're talking big scales out there. But so he did that, stock tank at the center of every section, and then by doing that, in the summertime, he had 18 sections that he would move through, and he only grazed once it's one grazing during the growing season, move through. And then on the regrowth, he'd come back through in the wintertime, split them into quarter sections, so now he has 72 paddocks to go through in the winter time. Winter for him is about 140 days of hay feeding. So if he can put the herd on here for 2 days, here 2 days, here 2 days, here 2 days, he gets through the winter. And if you've ever heard of Wolf Point, Montana, probably the only place you heard it is every once in a while on the weather you'll hear the coldest place in the United States today was Wolf Point, Montana. This is up in the northeastern corner on the plains. It is windy, it is cold. They routinely experience 40, 45 below zero there. He feeds no hay. Runs a cow herd there year-round grazing. Feeds no hay. And again, all he's doing is strip grazing on a huge scale. I just want to illustrate, whether we're talking about 20 acres or 20,000 acres, you can do this. We changed the tools a little bit, the layout a little bit, but the basic principles are there. And again, as I said, it eliminated all hay feeding while increasing his cattle numbers. And we're not going to do that one. If we can get the lights on, we'll take the last few questions and see if they're ready to call us for lunch. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Okay, do we factor in or do we worry about shade? If you have adapted cattle and you manage your spring season right, I'm not particularly concerned about shade even here. If you don't have cattle that can cope with the heat, and if you start them into spring in shade, you're not going to be able to go at midsummer to a place with no shade. And where we see people get in trouble is, you know, they have kind of their woodland pastures that they use April, May, June, get your hay cut 4th of July, and maybe by August, 1st of August, you're ready to go out on those hay fields, but those hay fields don't have any shade. So you have cattle that through the first 4 months of the season, and it's gradually been getting warmer and warmer and hotter, they still had shade to go to, and then you take them out of that on the 1st of August and throw them on these hay fields that don't have shade. That is a recipe for having a wreck. North Missouri is a little different from South Missouri, but we still did get very warm, very humid up there. On our personal farm, we have red-hided cattle, all with Barzona influence in, which is a Africana Sandwich Hereford composite breed. So all of our cattle did have a little ear. They were red-hided. We calved April, May, which meant we bred. Our bulls went in there the 20th of July, and so we were breeding the end of July and in August. Year in, year out, 45-day season, we ran 93% conception rate because we had cattle that would work. And in the picture, that 80 across the road, basically there's no shade over there. We had a lot of pastures that had no shade. We did not worry about it. Our cattle functioned. At the research station, because I've been doing it at home and this worked, we tried to take part of the herd and move them to a later calving season. And typically there was no shade at the research pastures either, except the bull pastures always had shade. And so we took bulls out of the shaded pasture 20th of July, put them in with cows, and some of you are familiar with this study, but the first year of that study we had like a 90% conception rate. Next year 68, the final year was down in the 40s, 40% is all we got bred. And it was complete collapse of the bulls that did it. The cows were still cycling. Whether or not they could have settled and retained a fetus, I don't know. But the problem was the bulls just crashed and burned by taking them out of the shade, putting them in the hot. So, again, that's a long answer. If you have the right kind of cattle and you're doing everything right, I would not be overly concerned about trying to put shade in every pasture. If you want to stick with, big black cattle because you like big black cattle and, a number of other things, then you better plan for shade. This is where electric fence has an advantage in that you can squiggle those electric fences wherever you want to try to incorporate the shade. It's a whole lot harder to run 5-strand barbed wire fences and get shade into every area. But with electric fence, remember, straight is not necessary in electric fence. Bend them, curve them, fit them to your landscape. If you need to have the shade, it's a whole lot easier to do with electric fencing than it is others.
Jim?
Actually, let me get this. Okay. Okay. The question Glenn has is, on the electric netting, did we have what was hot on every strand, or did we have the hot ground where you have a hot poly wire, a cold poly wire, a hot poly, like that? We used both. We ended up going back to the everything hot, and the reason why is when that hot ground stuff is brand new, it's great. When you start getting a little wear and tear on it, and you have a hot wire that's broken and it hangs down to a ground wire, or vice versa, then you can't keep the voltage in it, and it's not worth a darn. So we went back to all hot. Right. But I definitely prefer the all hot. And yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, on the permanent fence, you said we raised it up 6 foot to let them crawl under, go under as a gate. Won't that be an angle like to your other deal? What's preventing from getting into another paddock that you had over there?
Okay. The question is on using the lift gate. What prevents them, because your wire is raised up and then running down at an angle, what's preventing them from going into the next paddock? Usually, if we have two PowerFlex posts in the line, that's going to be defining the edge of our paddock. And it might be 2 or 3 post spans that is the paddock for today. Obviously, it depends on the number of animals you have. If your paddock is from one PowerFlex fence to the next one, or one line post to the next one, then you're going to want to use a system where you're leaving the wire anchored at each end and lifting in the center, so that the angle is only opening to what is today's paddock. Yeah.
When you're strip grazing your corridor in the winter, how important is it to keep our back wires off the ground?
Question, when you're strip grazing in the winter, how important is it to keep the back fence up to keep them off of where you've been? In North Missouri, it was very unimportant. In Idaho, it's completely irrelevant because everything is frozen back there and they're not going to hurt anything. Down here, where you're more likely to have a lot of fluctuating temperatures in the winter and you can get mud behind you, as long as you're kind of dry and firm behind it, I'm not going to worry about a back fence. If you start getting sloppy back there, then you probably want to run a temporary lane with the poly wire going back to your water and use a back fence. Or the other thing is you just shift to a different corridor and graze, a different corridor until it starts to get problematic, then go to another place and, just keep track, monitor what the moisture is doing, and if it's dried out, firmed up enough where you can go to one that you left, go back to it and clean it up. That's why we call it management intensive grazing, which I should advertise in my books, but I haven't done that yet. Most of you know when they're out and around. We would love to, if you don't already have management intensive grazing, grass farming, or kick the hay habit, they'd love to sell you one at the front desk, and I'd be more than happy to sign it for you. I always say that makes it worth more when you sell it on eBay. One last question, and then let's break for lunch. The question will be then, which way do we go? Same way we've always gone, out this way, get to the line, and let's have a little lunch.